So, in the last video, we looked at the outside-in approach to resources and capabilities and talked about how in that view you examine capabilities based on what's required to support a strategy that was developed from the external environment uh, and see whether you have the capabilities that are needed. Here, we're going to switch views and go to an inside-out approach. And an inside-out approach, it's a very different view. As you see, kind of as was laid out in your book, in a the resource-based or inside-out view, now we're going to move from looking at the resources, letting that be the driver of things here, examining the capabilities, the things we can do well, seeing what may be unique and what we might want to try to build our advantage on. Then we find industries, build a strategy, um, and put it into place. So we work from the inside out rather than from the outside in. Why would the resource-based view think that way? Well, it's a very different set of assumptions about the nature of capabilities. I showed in the last video kind of the outside in or economics view assumes that resources and capabilities are homogeneous, can be easily found or developed. The resource-based view, in contrast, sees resources and capabilities as unique, heterogeneous, varying from firm to firm, and suggests that at least some of them can be difficult to develop or acquire. We'll see more about that on Tuesday in class. Kind of what conditions might make that true. But if you make those assumptions, then there is this belief that resources and capabilities can in fact be the source of competitive advantage and that one ought to build from them. Another rationale, kind of an extension of this, suggests that while the economics view sees the industry as relatively stable and industry structure as being the primary driver, the resource-based view suggests that the actions of firms tend to make industries change and evolve, sometimes fairly rapidly. And if that's the nature of the world, then it is the resources and capabilities that you have to build on to try to develop your competitive advantage. So, again, very much a focus here on what the firm has and what the firm is able to do. Right? Said kind of one more time. Then the inside-out approach. All right? The notion is that competitive advantage comes from having valuable capabilities that others don't have and can't duplicate. And then if we can find a way to build a strategy that leverages those, we'll then have a real advantage in the marketplace. And the terminology we introduced back in chapter 2 about the environment, this would be a blue ocean view, right? One that says we can kind of create the world that we want to compete in by our actions. Let me pause here and make a kind of note on terminology. Over the years, a number of different terms have been introduced. Sometimes they're different, sometimes they're really another way of saying the same thing. And different people use them different ways. So you see things like capabilities, competencies, core competencies, etc. And your book introduces a number of these. In my experience, while there are technical distinctions between these, it's going to vary to a large degree on who's using them. And those distinctions are blurry. It can get hard to really know when you finish one and move to another, and I tend to find that confusing and not really of much help. So I will try to be consistent here and use a generic term of capabilities, but do recognize that others may call the same thing by slightly different names and try to get comfortable with the underlying idea rather than getting too hung up on the label that's attached to it. Again, all of this is kind of working from this notion that we are looking for things that the firm can do better than, different than other firms. And whether we call that a competence, a core competence, a capability, doesn't really matter too much. So I will try to stick with the notion of capabilities here. Oh, if that's the case, then how are we going to define this notion of capabilities? Well, as you see on the screen, capabilities represent firm-specific abilities that bring together and configure resources and business processes to help the firm achieve their desired strategic orientation, their value proposition, and therefore, hopefully, the goals of the business. So, capabilities are not just a single thing, it is something that we do that utilizes the various parts of the firm, the things we have, um, and the way we organize and go about our work. Now, when you think about capabilities, again, a number of different labels have been used. People will talk about productivity capabilities, cross-cultural effectiveness, cross-unit synergies. Seems like every time I pick up a new article, there is someone trying to talk about a new kind of business capability. Again, sometimes okay, trying to make distinctions, get finer grain, but for our purposes, I think it's easier to use a classification where you focus on the areas in which the capability is employed. In which case, we are talking about operational capabilities, customer capabilities, and innovation capabilities. And let's look at each of those in a bit more detail. Operational capabilities are really internally focused. The regular day-to-day operations of the firm combine the resources and help us just do things day to day better. So it might be in reducing the cost of a product or service, it might be in improving the quality of a product or service, the delivery, distribution, but it's helping us do the things we do in terms of our operations. Customer capabilities, in contrast, tend to be externally focused, right? Dealing with the customers, dealing with the people outside of the firm, so they can help us shape the reputation, provide better service, um, whatever it is that we have to interact with on a regular basis. Innovation capabilities, as the name might imply, are things used to create new or improved products and services. You might also put in improved processes here because some firms focus on innovations to improve the way they do things. However, for these capabilities to matter, they must do things that are perceived as valuable by the customer and can help create competitive advantage for the firm. So it's not just doing things to do things, it's doing things that people care about. Oh, if you want to look at these again a slightly different way, here's some examples of each of the three types of capabilities. Operational, um, again, as I mentioned, in quality, cost, maybe distribution. And you see firms like UPS and Walmart tend to focus on operational capabilities. Customer capabilities more often associated with um, service, getting close to the customer. Companies like Tiffany's or Ritz-Carlton, Nordstrom, the department store industry emphasize their customer capabilities. And then the innovation capabilities, it's not just can you innovate once, it's do you have the capabilities to do this on kind of a regular basis. And companies like Apple, you're familiar with Johnson and Johnson and healthcare products and services. seem to be able to do this on a regular basis. 3M, that brings you Scotch tape and Post-it notes, tries to make sure that something like 25% of their revenues are coming from uh, products introduced in the last couple of years. So they want to make sure they have a continuous stream of innovation. Um, so an innovation capability, again, not just once, but can you do this on a regular basis? Given these three types, we can ask the question, how many capabilities should a firm focus on? It's a good question. It is hard to be really good at stuff. And I guess because of that, research has suggested that a company should choose one capability type to try to excel at. That is, be really good at one thing. And if you think about it, most of the time when we look at a value proposition, it is built on one of the types of capabilities. It's built on operational capabilities, or it's built on customer capabilities, or it's built on innovation capabilities. So having one that you do really, really well is important. And that does not mean that you can completely ignore the other two. You need to be at least proficient. If you can be really good at more than one, that's fine. But don't make the mistake of spreading yourself too thin, if you will, to be a jack of all trades or master of none. In the inside out or resource based view, you need to be a master of at least one, and be really good and different and better than other firms. So, broadly, that's an introduction to the inside out approach. It looks at the nature of business capabilities and the types of, and then when we come back to class on Tuesday, we'll talk about what is it about capabilities that might make them different, better, unique, and worth building a strategy around. For now, though, finish up this video and then go and take a short quiz to see what you've remembered from each of the three videos. And then we'll see you in class on Tuesday.